This story about my 9-year-old self. My parents were pastors in a church, and we grew up in the mountains of Colorado in days where there were party lines. You all know what that is? So in other words, we had a phone, but we shared the phone line with our neighbors, and so 1 ring was us, 2 rings was the neighbor, 3 rings, and so I could listen to everybody's conversations. It's how we kept entertained. We had no TV. And being in a pastor's home, one of the things that my mom was in charge of was the prayer chain, which is just multi-level marketing prayer. For those of you who don't know how that works, but one person would call my mom with a prayer request, and then she would call 3 other people, they would call 3 other people, and then everyone in the church would know all the gossip in the entire church. Well, there was this one family, I guess it wasn't all gossip, but I guess there was this one family in the church who had been on that prayer chain for a long time, struggling with infertility, struggling with, they had a 12-year-old son, they couldn't get pregnant again. And then they had gone through an adoption and had a brand new little kid in their home. But before the adoption could be complete, that child was ripped out of their home. That happened twice to them. So they were kind of taking up permanent residency in the prayer chain. And we all began to pray, even me as a kid. Like, man, we just want them to have a child. Well, the day came when they finally got word that they were getting a little girl. Well, this girl had been in the newspaper. She was called the Box Girl. She was born to a prostitute, and they discovered her being held inside of a cardboard box inside of a bedroom where her mother was working. She'd never been outdoors, had barely been outside of that box, had no clothes, couldn't have trouble seeing because she'd been in the dark so much, tiny for her age, and she was in the hospital going through months of rehab, hoping to one day be reunited with this new family. This family also happened to be the richest family that I knew. As a 9-year-old living in the mountains in Colorado, it was kind of a big deal. And I loved it the day when my parents said, hey, we've been invited over to lunch at these people's house. Well, I wanted to see the inside of that house. And I wanted to see the home where Kate was going to go. So we went, and I remember walking into a bedroom that was prepared for this little girl of theirs. And it had a canopy bed draped in white eyelet, ruffles galore all over the bed, skirt, bed sheets, everything, a rose-colored carpet with rose petals everywhere on it, a dollhouse that was as big as I was, all the furniture in the dollhouse, dolls with tags on them, stuffed animals with tags on them, tons of books, new books. It was the most glorious room I'd ever seen. And I sat there thinking, lucky Kate. Oh, I wish I was Kate. It was a magical room. Well, Kate finally came home one day, and I remember the day that I finally got to see her in church. I chose not to go to children's church because I knew she wasn't going. I wanted to just sit where I could watch her. I was so fascinated and caught up in her life. I mean, this was like the ultimate rags to riches story. And watching little Kate. Well, Kate had a couple of weird habits about her. And I remember bugging my mom, you gotta find out, you get this on the prayer chain, we gotta know what's going on here. But Kate would carry a sack of bread everywhere she went. It was Wonder Bread, so it was a wad in the bottom of the sack. It wasn't something you'd eat. But she carried it everywhere she went. And so finally my mom, because she was done having me bug her, finally asked Kate's mom one time, why does she carry that sack of bread? And I will never forget what her mother said. Well, at every meal she was sneaking food into her pockets and carrying it up and hiding it all over her bedroom. And I'd go up and sneak it out of there, didn't want to shame her or anything, but finally there came a day where I was like, okay, this is getting unhealthy. So she went up into the bedroom with Kate and said, we're going to clean out all the food out of the drawers, under the bed, everywhere that she had tucked morsels of food. And she said, these will get rotten up here. They're not going to be any good to eat anyway. And I want to show you something. And she took her down to the pantry. And she opened up the pantry. And they stepped into the kitchen. And she said, this is also yours. Bedroom's yours, but this is yours too. And I've got a drawer down here that's right at your level. And you can open this drawer anytime you want. 5-year-old girl, and you can eat anything that's in there. And 3 times a day, I'm going to come into this space in the house and I'm going to make sure there's a meal for you. 3 times a day. But in case you don't believe me, in case you're unsure, I'm going to give you a sack of bread to keep up in your room. it would be weeks of Kate needing that sack of bread with her. She also had some other strange habits. She demanded that there be a cardboard box moved into her bedroom. She slept naked on the floor inside of a cardboard box for weeks as well, and her mother pulled up a mattress and slept next to her. One day, Kate came to her mom and said, "Could you hold this for me?" and handed her the sack of bread and never went back for it. It wasn't too long before they moved the cardboard box on top of the bed, moved one side of it, were able to get her into a nightgown, and over the course of time, Kate was able to sleep in a regular bed. What changed about Kate? She believed that the banquet was good. She believed it would be there the next day. She believed that a mom and dad loved her. How would you feel if I told you this story and told you that her mother said, "Kate, this is ridiculous. I've done all this for you. I've spent thousands of dollars on this bedroom, you ingrateful little child." How would that make you feel?
Ungrateful.
Mad, right?
You believe a lie.
Yeah. But somehow we believe that God who loves us is like that, disappointed in us, wishes we got our act together sooner, thinks we're not doing enough. When really, the heart of God just wants you to eat, feast on His goodness, His mercy, His love, His benevolence, get wrapped up in the emotion of Him. And He gets the fact that you're broken. He knows where you came from. And there's not a person in this room that doesn't have a sack of bread or 2 or 10 that you're carrying around. And you know what the Father knows? That as you pick up a fork and eat, one day that sack of bread will be left alone. One day you'll be able to realize that you don't need this other sack of bread. And He's patient with you, and His method for bringing you to health and wholeness in Him is not to rip sacks of bread out of your hand or shame you into being a better person. It's just to continually invite you to the table to feast on all that He's offered